Hi, my name is Ryan Jantzi, and I'm the lead pastor with Kingsfield Zurich Mennonite Church. Thanks a lot for taking a few moments to join me as we fix our attention on the life, the death, and the resurrection of Jesus, as we celebrate Easter together and the incredible message of hope that it is. I'd like to share with you a time when I forgot my toothbrush, and it turned out to be quite a catastrophe for me. I was 14 years old, my first summer at youth camp, and I was looking forward to a ton of fun. Pretty pumped about the opportunity to go wakeboarding, looking forward to campfires together, and if I'm going to be completely honest, I was also anticipating the opportunity to maybe find a nice young lady who would take a shine to me that week. And so I packed with great care. I grabbed my favorite flip-flops. I can remember them clear as day, those plain old Navy ones. I packed my swimming trunks. I grabbed my Michael Jordan Bulls jersey that I thought I looked pretty fine and stuffed it all in my bag, and I was ready to go. Well, I got there the first night at camp, getting ready for bed, and I'm looking for my toothbrush, and it's nowhere to be found. I'm like, oh, shoot. This is not going to go well. If I'm going to leave a good impression with the females around here, I am going to need a toothbrush. How am I going to do that if I have horrid breath and fuzz growing on my teeth? And I wasn't about to go through the embarrassment and the general gross factor of borrowing a toothbrush from a buddy. And so what I did, I smothered toothpaste all over my finger and I brushed my teeth that way. Things turned out okay, but my mouth still, I think, smelled pretty horrible and it certainly felt horrible. And I didn't find any nice young lady who returned any interest in me. Unfortunately, there could be a whole variety of factors for that, but we're going to blame it on the lack of a toothbrush that week. So it turns out that in my attention to detail, my care to pack, I had forgot something that turned out to be pretty significant. I'm going to share with you during this time a story about Miriam. Now, Miriam is someone who was packing for a great journey, and as she was packing, she packed something that seemed very significant. She packed something that others would have looked and said, well, what do you need that for as you flee in this moment of intensity? She packed a tambourine. She packed this tambourine as a sign of hope, as an expectation of celebration of better things to come. And I share this message with you this morning with the hope that we would be formed as people of expectation, as we would be formed as people who know that at one point we are going to celebrate together. And so I want to encourage you, please don't forget to pack your ukulele, or whatever instrument it is that you play, or whatever means by which you celebrate. Don't forget to pack your uke, just as Miriam packed her ukulele. We are in the midst of some very challenging realities with COVID-19, and I've been focusing on this with my messages over the last number of weeks. We're surrounded by uncertainty. We're surrounded by fear. I don't know, as I've repeated a number of times, I don't know how this is all going to shake out. My wife, Brittany, she's a nurse, and it's not an immediate concern, but it certainly is in the back of our minds that at some point we might need to have her self-isolate from the rest of our family. She comes and goes from the hospital. She works in the maternity ward, and so it's not a huge concern at this point, but it is something in the back of our minds. As a pastor, I've been carrying some of the stress and the weight of wondering and thinking about how do I care for people well during this time? How do I play a role in making sure that we know that God is with us? How do I play a role in helping us to rise up to meet the great needs of this time? There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of fear and uncertainty for all of us in all of our unique ways as we wonder how this is going to unfold. The people of Israel also were under great pressure in the story that we look at. And I would expect actually a pressure that's much greater than what we are experiencing now. They were slaves in the land of Egypt. The incredible empire led by the great pharaohs, the wonderful architecture, the magnificent pyramids, these were built on the backs of slaves. And these Israelites were slaves. They had received a promise from God. God said, I'm going to make you into a great nation. I'm going to bless everybody through you. But here they were as slaves. These promises seemed far away. They probably seemed hard to believe. And so they worked and they worked and they worked. And they received the whipping of cruel masters. They received the increasing demands of making more and more bricks from the straw that they had. Their children were murdered as efforts by Pharaoh to limit their population. This was a hard and fearful life, seemingly with no hope, seemingly with no future. Now God raised up a leader in that time, and his name was Moses. And Moses went to God, and Moses heard from God, and God said, I want you to call my people out of Egypt. And so empowered by God, Moses and his brother Aaron went to Pharaoh, and they said, let my people go. They need to leave. And so eventually Pharaoh responds, and Pharaoh says, go, get out of here. And Pharaoh says, up, leave my people, you and the Israelites. Go, worship the Lord as you have requested. And so the people, they're scurrying about, they're getting ready to pack, they're grabbing their essential belongings. They have to take their children, they have to take their livestock. God moved in the hearts of the Egyptians to give them gold and silver, and so they plundered the citizens around them as they went to make their escape. They made bread to sustain them on the journey, but they were in such a hurry making this bread that they didn't even have time to put yeast in it. If you can imagine the panic, if you can imagine the uncertainty, they were about to step out into a land that they did not know. They were about to step out into a realm they had never seen. They didn't have the advantage of photographs to view where it was that they would be heading. They didn't have the advantage, as we do, of looking on Google Earth, checking out the satellite images to see what the territory would look like that they would be heading to. And so you can imagine that anticipation, the excitement, but the fear and the uncertainty. And as they're packing, as they're about to leave the door, Miriam grabs her tambourine and she stuffs it into her sack. Now, what good could a tambourine have on a journey to freedom? What good? How could it help them escape from the evil hand of Pharaoh? Miriam packs her tambourine. She was expecting something more than the terror that they were in the midst of. This was a sign of defiant hope. She expected to celebrate when they would arrive at their deliverance. And God did deliver. Through over a number of days and a series of events, they actually ended up crossing the Red Sea. The miraculous hand of God spread the waters apart. They walked across on dry land. The waters closed up behind them. I'll read the words from chapter 15, verse 19 of Exodus. It says, when Pharaoh's horses, chariots, and horsemen went into the sea, the Lord brought the waters of the sea back over them. But the Israelites walked through on dry ground. This was a story of deliverance. Now they stood safely on the other side of this body of water, safely separated from Pharaoh and from his violent army. They were set free. They were ready to begin a new life. They had been rescued and they had been delivered. We also have been rescued and delivered through the death and the resurrection of Jesus. We're captive to our sin, the many things that we do that resist our Creator, the many things we say, I'm going to go my own way, that violate God's will, the things that destroy us and set us on a path away from God and a path toward death. But God, in his love, sent Jesus, his son Jesus, to the cross. Jesus gave his life. He took our sins upon himself. He said, I'm going to stand in, take the death that you are headed toward, take the death that you deserve. I will die on your behalf so that you can be set free. And then God added his exclamation mark by raising Jesus from the dead. Jesus spent 3 days in the tomb. On the third day, there were some young women that went to take a look and to honor his body with some spices. And they arrive and the tomb is empty. And there's an angel there. And that angel says from Luke 24, says, why do you look for the living among the dead? He's not here. He has risen. This is the exclamation point of God's love for us. This is the exclamation point of God's victory over death. This is the great rescue that we have needed in the very same way that the Israelites needed rescue from the evil slavery in Egypt. And so we can live forever. Death has no power over us. God has shown that he's more powerful than the worst ploys, the worst schemes of the deceiver. Life will win over death. For those who place their faith in Jesus, for those who say, I want to walk according to your will. I believe that you are God. I believe that you died to forgive my sin. I believe that you rose from the dead so that I could be delivered. And we see Jesus' words in John 11. He says, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will never die. And so we have hope. There's the hope of personal salvation. There's the hope that when we die in this life, that there will be life to come forever. We will live with God. Our physical death in this world is not the end of our story. We also see in the resurrection of Jesus that as we go through calamity, as we go through catastrophe, there are better days ahead. For the Israelites, as they went through that journey of uncertainty and fear, they had better days ahead in their rescue. As Jesus endured the cross on our behalf, there were better days of glory ahead for him. And so it is for us. In the midst of the story of the uncertainty that we face right now with COVID-19, we have this hope that God is with us, that he will rescue us, and that there are better days ahead. This is the promise that Miriam held on to. It's really quite remarkable that she packed her tambourine because she was ready for celebration. What does celebration look like in your life? When I think back about celebrations that I've enjoyed, I think of high school basketball. We won the championship one year and jumping around on the floor, hooting and hollering and hugging each other. Other instances, I think of the collective celebration that we shared as a here in Ontario, or maybe Canadian society in general, when the Raptors won the championship last year. I remember just like shaking my head in disbelief, just this weight. When you're a fairly avid sports fan, you feel this weight of discouragement that Toronto just can't seem to ever win. And then all of a sudden they won a championship, and I remember just like shaking my head like, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and this didn't actually happen. And just being so excited and watching the parade and seeing the crowd of hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people jumping and cheering and jumping on newspaper stands and light poles and on buses. And it was exciting times. That's a place in which I've experienced celebration. Maybe where you've experienced celebration, it's in quieter ways, quieter times. I know last summer, one night we had a great feast outside. I made some steak over the campfire. And I remember being like, oh, this is so good. And I remember just being overwhelmed by this feeling of celebration, the goodness of God and his presence in our lives. Just like, God, I think that this outdoor meal, this amazing steak, my family on a warm, sunny day, this is a foretaste of the kingdom of God. And it felt very celebratory. What has celebration felt like for you? When Miriam experienced that rescue from God, when she stood in safety, when she had a hopeful future ahead of her and a dark past behind her, she could not help but celebrate. That tambourine that she had packed in her bags when they left Egypt, she pulled out. It says in Exodus 15, verse 20, it says, Then Miriam, the prophet, Aaron's sister, took a timbrel in her hand, and all the women followed her with timbrels and dancing. Miriam sang to them, Sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. Both horse and driver he has hurled into the sea. This was a story of deliverance, and Miriam couldn't help but celebrate. And in that text, you see this whole big song that she wrote. So she's dancing, she's singing, they're celebrating, they're having a wild party in this time. I really think it's incredible. I can imagine that maybe someone who is a no-nonsense kind of person said, Miriam, why would you bring your tambourine with us? We should only take what we need. We're going to have to be light. We've got a journey ahead of us. This is nonsense. She said, no, we are going to celebrate the good things that God is going to do. It was defiant in the face of terror. It was hopeful for the future. And so I share this with you. And as I mentioned earlier, I want you also to be ready to celebrate. I want you to pack your uke. I want you to grab whatever instrument it is or whatever means by which you celebrate and take it with you on this journey and know that what you are enduring now is not the end of the story. We have a hopeful future. We need to hold on to that during this time. Know that as we go through, even aside from COVID-19, as we go through the challenges of life, as we face physical death on this earth, there is celebration to come to follow. So setting it in the big picture, setting it in the little picture of, I shouldn't say little, in I guess the smaller, more limited picture that we experience now with COVID-19. Celebration is going to come. And so I ask, would you be people of celebration during this time? Celebrate along the way. Wait for the big celebration that is to come at the end. Can you imagine the day in which we can finally gather in the park again? When we can finally have a family reunion again? When we can get together with our softball team? When we can go camping at the Pinery or wherever? That will be a great celebration, and we will say, thank you so much, God, for delivering us from this time. That is coming. God will carry us through. But I also want to invite you to have those moments of celebration as well now, with that uke, with that tambourine, with that piece of celebration that you pack. Celebrate along the way, because our deliverance is coming. Last week I preached about lament. Lament will be a critical part of navigating this journey well, crying out to God, sharing your anger, sharing your frustration, sharing your despair with him. That will be critical. Celebration will also be critical, and we can celebrate because of what Jesus has done through his resurrection. This is the big sign. This is the big display that evil is always overcome by life through the power of Jesus. And so in closing, I also want to invite you, if you don't personally know this power of Jesus, I want to invite you to ask Jesus into your life. I want to invite you to open yourself up and say, God, I need this peace. I need this hope. I confess that I have sinned. I confess that I need you to be my king. I want to be within your kingdom someday. You can just pray that out to God. Invite him into your life in this time so that you can share in this hope, so that you can be with God in his kingdom and celebrate there one day. So in conclusion, I want to ask, what are the ways that you are going to prepare for celebration, whether it's for eternal life or whether it's now? What are the ways that you're going to celebrate along the way? Maybe it is when you're doing the dishes, you're going to turn up the music and sway the hips a little bit as you go. Maybe it's you're going to belt out some good tunes in the car. Maybe it's you're going to make sure that you enjoy some board games with your family. Maybe it's just celebrating and smiling in the presence of God as you dwell on the promises that he has given us. Lots of ways to celebrate along the way. If you're on social media, you will have noticed that in the last number of weeks, there are a lot of memes floating around, a lot of these silly pictures with words, a lot of humor. And I actually think that's been a critical part of our journey, having humor to carry us through. And it's just a way of celebrating. So, in summary, I invite you to be like Miriam. She packed a tambourine, pack your uke, or whatever it is that you celebrate with. Rejoice in God. Rejoice in who he is. Rejoice in what he is doing. That will sustain us through that time, and through this time of angst, and it will be a sign for the ultimate celebration that we will have. God is with us. He will get us through this, and someday we will fully and finally celebrate those who have placed their faith in Jesus with him in his kingdom, all because of the resurrection of power, power of Jesus when he rose from the dead on Easter Sunday. So much to be hopeful about, so much to celebrate. Thanks a lot for being with me. I encourage you to join with us, Kingsfield Zurich Mennonite Church, for worship Sunday morning, 11 a.m. Please message us. You can message us on our social media accounts to find out how you can join us. We get together on Zoom. We think it's super important to see one another face to face during this time. We think it's super important to pray together. It's nothing fancy, it's nothing polished, it's just people together asking God for help. So we'd love to have you join us, whether you're from nearby, from far away, whoever you are. Message us, we'll get you the Zoom link to join us for that. That's 11 a.m. Sunday morning. All right, may God be with you as we celebrate Easter this weekend. Take care.